And they were in the worst time of Israelite history. They had been wrenched from their homeland into captivity in Babylon. Hope was on a major low. And God comes to Ezekiel and he says, you know what? This is the kind of God I am. This is what I am about to do. Trust in me. And even in your worst moment, this is what I want to do through you. I call it the River of Grace. Here you have a depiction of the passage, an artist's rendition there of a river that comes out of the place of sacrifice in the temple. This is the text we're going to be looking at in chapter 47 of Ezekiel. And as it goes and gets deeper and deeper, you'll see all the components of what we're going to talk about today in this picture. As you look through commentaries about Ezekiel 47 and the temple vision here, it's not the same temple that existed back in Jerusalem at the time. So the measurements that are taken there, it's something different than what was in place structurally back in Jerusalem. And some commentators say, no, this is the millennial kingdom temple. And the river is going to literally happen during the 1,000-year reign of Christ. There's going to be this literal river that's going to run east and west, coming out of the place of altar there in the temple. That may be. Others say, no, this is a picture of the church and how from the sacrifice of Jesus Christ on the cross, there flows from the foot of the cross grace to the nations, watering the deserts of the world, and that also certainly may be. What I do know is that as we look at what God has to say to Ezekiel in this passage, that his actions are not distant from his words. That when God says that this is what he desires for us, this kind of life along the side of this river, it is what he wants for us today as well. It's what God wants to do in our lives today. And in Ezekiel 47, 1 through 12, it starts, the man brought me back to the entrance of the temple, and I saw water coming out from under the threshold of the temple toward the east, for the temple faced east. So in this vision, as God shows Ezekiel, he's way over in Babylon, and God's showing him a vision of a temple in Jerusalem. And from that temple there begins a trickle of water coming out from the place of sacrifice. It says the water was coming down from under the south side of the temple, south of the altar. Now the altar is a place where lambs were killed, and blood was shed of a lamb to cover the sins of the people. And we know that the last place of sacrifice where the last lamb was sacrificed for us was the cross of Jesus Christ. And as we look at this text today, looking back at what God has done for us, we know that there flows from the sacrifice of Jesus Christ down through the ages, through every culture and into every desert, a river of grace that has the potential to water the most broken and dried out places of the world. And that's what I take away from this passage. As I look at a God that said it like this long ago, is willing to do it in my life today, in my own marriage, and I'm sure in your life as well. He says, he then brought me out through the north gate, led me around the outside of the outer gate, facing east, and the water was flowing from the south side. Here's a depiction of what it might have looked like, an artist's rendition there. This water, as you're going to see in the text, it flows east and west. It's coming from the place of sacrifice in the temple, but it actually goes towards the Mediterranean Sea and also to the Dead Sea. And that this area right around here is a wilderness area where pretty much you don't have anything growing, and then it heads to the Dead Sea. As the man went eastward with a measuring line in his hand, he measured off 1,000 cubits, and then he led me through water that was ankle deep. He measured off another 1,000 cubits and led me to water that was knee deep. And as you see, the water starts getting deeper. If you study how rivers are formed, they get deeper as they get farther from the source because other tributaries add to them, other water, rainwater comes in. But here we have a phenomena of a river that starts as a trickle coming from the place of sacrifice, goes into the driest place without contribution from other tributaries, is getting deeper. And it just speaks to me of how God does things. He he is decided to do things that seem impossible and opposite for us. The driest place it goes to is where it gets deeper. Where it needs more grace, that's where it's going to abound. And as he goes here, it says it gets knee deep. And then later on, he measured off another 1,000 and led me through water that was up to my waist. He measured off another 1,000, but now it was a river I could not cross, because the water had risen and was deep enough to swim in. A river that no one could cross. He asked me, "Son of man, do you see this?" And I think that's an important time in this text to stop and say, do you see what's going on? That in the vision, God doesn't take Ezekiel and say, "Listen, I want you to stay ankle deep. I don't want you to stay knee deep or waist deep." He says, "I'm taking you to a place where you're going to have to dive into this thing. It's deeper than what you could cross or anyone could cross on foot." And the text continues, and now he begins to tell us what life along the side of this river would really be like. Civilizations as far back as we can record have decided to live alongside rivers. Whether it's the Gallatin River, the Yellowstone River, the Nile River, people know that life is more abundant alongside a fresh water source or river. And that's where they usually build cities. And what God is saying is, where there was no fresh water source, where it was wilderness, from the point of sacrifice in the temple, there's going to flow water that gets deeper where it's drier, and it's going to bring the quality of life that previously would never have been known to that location. And he says, "Then he led me back to the bank of the river. When I arrived there, I saw a great number of trees on each side of the river." One of the neat things about when God restores something, when God inserts value into something that previously had no value, there is recognizable life along the sides of the river of God. And be it my life or your life, when God touches it, it's something recognizable. People can look at it and say, "Hey, there is something different about the way that person lives." And as you look at this river, on both sides, there's recognizable life. He says, "He said to me, the water flows toward the eastern region and goes down into Arabah, the desolate area, where it enters the sea. When it empties into the sea," now I live close to the ocean in Brazil, and there's a river that flows into the sea, and it's called in the Tramandaí Beach, and the water gets somewhat salty as it flows into the sea. It certainly doesn't turn the sea fresh because of the water flowing into the huge ocean. God's river is a little different than that. When it touches the sea, it's talking about the Mediterranean Sea here, it turns the sea water fresh. The river of God brings life to places which have previously only known death. It goes on to talk about how this water touches the Great Sea, and it also touches the Dead Sea. It says swarms of living creatures will live wherever the water flows. Not only is there recognizable life, but there is internal existing life inside the river of God. And changes come because the river flows there. It says there will be large numbers of fish because this water flows there. It's not because a very intelligent fish expert has taken fish into the river and placed it right at the right places and known how to feed those fish and cultivate the fish. It's not a human thing. It's because the water flows, there is. And that's the way it is with our lives. Because grace has flown and come through us, there is life. That's the only way to put it. He says, and it makes the salt water fresh, so where the river flows, everything will live. The issue is not in the wilderness here, in the vision that God is bringing to a very sad, very defeated people of Israel in captivity. The vision is not whether they're going to be able to muster up enough strategy to earn their way back or fight their way back into Jerusalem where they were taken from. It's, listen, are you going to let the river of God flow? Because where it flows into your life, that it will bring life because it's there. Fishermen will stand along the shore from En-Gedi to En Egalim. Now, those are two